Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our member spotlight. This week we have Sam Dobkin with us. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Excited that the weather has warmed up a little bit and hopefully it will continue to stay that way. Hopefully, no more polar vortex. I could definitely deal with nothing below zero. And so we've been lucky for a little bit now. So I always like to start these by asking, how long have you been a member of Temple of Air?
I've been a member of Temple for a bit now. I started going to Wednesday school when I was in seventh or eighth grade, and I've been participating ever since.
Great, that's amazing. And so in that time, you've obviously been able to be part of different activities or programs, some in USY, some throughout all of the synagogue and also school. So I'm curious, what are some of your favorite Temple of Air memories? Maybe you can give me one or two.
Uh, well, one of my favorite Temple of Aaron memories is a couple years ago. We went out to Camp Shy for a weekend in August, and it was like a little camp out, just some of the people from Temple, and we had a lot of fun out there. And that's a memory that really sticks with me.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, it's always fun getting to go to a campsite, whether you for somebody who grew up going to Jewish summer camp, I did. But even for some of my friends who didn't grow up to Jewish summer camp, when they get to go to a campsite with their synagogue or whatever group, they always seem to have it be extra fun. I think for us as adults, it allows us to return back to a time when we were a little bit younger and just we're a little bit more carefree. And it's just always fun to be out in nature. Um, and so I also try, realize that we are in the middle of a pandemic still, coming up now on a full year, at least here in the States, affecting us. And I think a lot of us anticipated missing being able to maybe go to restaurants, or we anticipated missing being able to see our friends and family or travel. Like I haven't seen my parents actually since this August will be 2 years actually. And so I'm curious though, what is something that's unexpected that you didn't think you would miss? I mean, right before we hopped on camera, I said, seeing people's mouths for facial reactions has been something that I didn't anticipate missing. So I'm curious what's something maybe that you're missing that you didn't anticipate.
I never thought I'd miss actually going to school because, I mean, as a high schooler, never going back into school seems like such a great idea, but then you don't get the social interaction that you used to. And then with this pandemic, you're just locked up inside and you can't really get out. So
Right.
I, I
No.
think when we go back to hybrid learning in a couple of, I think in a week now, or 5 days, because it's the 22nd we go back to school. I think I'm really looking forward to that, seeing my friends.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's a perfect segue because I was going to ask, I understand what it's like to be in the middle of a pandemic as an adult who's working, who has been hybrid working from an office, from a home office. But, my daughter Aria has been able to go to preschool pretty consistently. And so I was going to ask, what has it been like being a high schooler? What have been some of the perhaps benefits of it, of, the virtual learning? But what have been some of the major difficulties, like as you've experienced them?
Yeah, so school's definitely easier at home, but it's also at the same time very much harder because you have to teach yourself all of like most of the material if some of your teachers aren't like the best. But it's also easier because you have a lot of free time, a lot more free time. So you're able to space out your workload a lot better. So it's not just cramming it at night. It's wake up in the morning, go to class for a bit, and then, oh, I have the next 10 hours to do my homework that's going to take me 2, maybe 3 hours. So I'm able to just do like one assignment, take a small break, then do another one. It's a lot more laid back and less stressful.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, I think the thing that high schoolers are probably missing the most, I would imagine, are the social interactions, the seeing friends in the hallways, you know, for a long time, probably organized sports and those things in the same way of what you were used to doing. And so on some level, I think maybe as a high schooler, because as you said, you're sort of teaching yourself a little bit and you can kind of get ahead. It seems almost like an interesting preparation for college a little bit, like where you're a little bit more in control of when you do your work instead of saying, oh, I'm at school for X number of hours and then I'm at home doing it. That seems almost like a little bit of a college prep in an unexpected way to potentially look at as it glass half full sort of
Yeah,
way of
absolutely.
view, because I can imagine for the younger learners, right? So our, you know, elementary school kids who really are trying to learn and not don't have the ability to teach themselves, that'd be a lot more difficult. So that's really interesting to hear. And then, so now that you have been able to space out sort of your learning and be able to have maybe a little bit more free time in the middle of the day to maybe watch something on Netflix or on the computer, I'm curious, are there any TV shows or movies or anything that you've binge watched? I'm sure you have. Or what have been your favorite, or what has been the worst thing that you've binge watched?
So I haven't had really any bad ones yet, but I did start watching, or I watched a couple of the Marvel shows on Netflix, like Iron Fist
Oh,
and
nice.
Agents of Shield. I'm currently watching Supernatural.
Oh, nice.
That's my current binge watch one.
That's good. Yeah, it's good to not have bad ones. I say sometimes bad ones are sometimes the ones you're embarrassed that you watched. And I think for a lot of people who I've asked that to, and myself included, my one was The Tiger King, which is like now almost like a year ago, which is crazy to think that that's how long ago that sort of came out, was like, I think April or very early into the pandemic. And so I'd watched that. But yeah, I also find myself watching like old shows because now we have HBO Max also, and so
Mhm.
I've been watching like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and things like that from like my childhood, like in the 90s. So, but that's good. Yeah, it's always good to be able to find something good to watch, and that's nice. You have a little bit of time to do that with being able to sort of set up your daily schedule a little bit better for yourself. Um, then also one thing that more people have been doing, obviously, is online shopping. Amazon has done great throughout all this. One company that is. I'm curious, is there anything really cool that you bought? Anything that just seems kind of random because you're like, I have extra time at home and I can't do anything else, that you might have bought, or that you're maybe even looking to buy because you were still not fully out of this. So I'm curious for you what that might be.
I'm not really big on shopping, but one thing that I did buy was a punching bag
Oh,
for
nice.
a bit of extra physical activity and some gloves, and I've been using that as a little workout, a little bit of fun.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely in the vein of like a very popular trend. I mean, we're one also, we bought a stationary bike because April
Mhm.
likes to do the Peloton stuff. So we bought a knockoff Peloton where I can just put my own iPad on it and we don't need to worry about the screen. And so she can do that. I bought some weights. But yeah, I have boxing gloves, but I don't really have anything to hit. So that's been the reason I haven't done that. But that's good. It's right. It's important to try and find those other ways to be physical, especially something that I struggle with because I'm a person who loves to go to the gym and use the gym and shoot hoops. And I haven't been able to shoot hoops at the JCC since, you know, they shut down. It's been crazy how long it's been closed. So I definitely understand that. My other thing is I bought during all this time, like half the world, I also bought a Nintendo Switch. So that's been fun. It took a long time for me to find one, but
Yeah,
in
they're
the
out of
end,
stock everywhere for
I
a
know
good
it was
solid half a
unreal.
year, probably.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. My stepdaughter's boyfriend's brother, it's a mouthful, was a person who was like looking for them to buy them. I think he might have been reselling them, but he was able to get one for me that was at price. So that was good, and was able to do that. And I've been enjoying trying to do that every here and then, playing, you know, Mario Kart and other things as well.
Mhm.
And then, so one last question before I let you go is, other people have been leaning into hobbies or skills. So maybe the boxing and the punching bag is sort of maybe a new hobby or skill that you've picked up. Or some people have been really leaning into previous hobbies that they had. So is there any hobby or skill that you might have picked up or that you have doubled down on doing during this time?
Not really. I've just been continuing my hobbies of I go to soccer. We that started back up a bit. Like you said, I picked up the punching bag one. I've been trying to play a bit more of Magic the Gathering. That's an old hobby of mine,
Nice.
but it's really hard with the pandemic because you can't really play with people.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a bit difficult, but I'm trying to
Yeah.
do that as much as possible.
Yeah, it's so crazy the ways that we try and like have social interactions and people playing different games online and trying to do those sort of things. It's so fascinating. I've talked with different people who have talked about like, yeah, we play video games, but then we turn on Zoom while we're playing it together so that we can sort of look at each other and it's like we were, because they don't have Twitch and they don't have the whole setup for it. But they're like, that's how we try and make it work. And I was like, yeah, it's good to try and connect with friends, and playing games is such a really great way to do it. And I think that's one thing too, like playing a board game with people who are outside of your house, or cards with people outside of your house is something that's really difficult and now sort of lacking from a lot of our lives. So it's good though. It's good that you've picked up, the boxing and have been able to play soccer a little bit. I'm sure that's been a lot of fun for you to be able to get back into that. So Sam, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to be with us. And thank you to everybody for watching. And we will be back next week with another member spotlight. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.